Yes, we're good. Thank you, Molly. Thank you, Austin. Gary, love you, brother. Jordan, that's somewhere. Gary's daughter, who's amazing. Thank you all for coming. I'm a bit of a tornado. So what they did not tell you when you came tonight is that you are absolutely going to leave changed. Or I did not do my job. My prayer is that only those who are willing to listen and listen with the heart would show up. I literally prayed that you would have a flat tire on your way here. I did. Because I'm looking for Gideon's 300. I'm looking for those. I'm not looking for the 10,000 that will stab me in the back or will be part of the problem or will look like DC. I'm not here to make friends. Sorry. I've got a wife and kids that love me. I've got a God that loves me, and the rest I don't care about. I am on a warpath from the womb until I go back to meet my Maker. It is so rare to find a politician. And if there's politicians in the room, if you want to be offended, please be offended. It's so rare to find a politician that will take real serious issues and put their political capital at risk. I want to encourage you for the rest of your life, when you vote, ask yourself, what is the politician risking? Because if he plays it safe, he's not playing for you. He's playing for himself. If it looks like he's risking a lot, you're going to find very few. I can honestly tell you that Gary is one of those guys. I don't look at Gary and see a politician. I know he's running for governor, and I honor that, but I will never look at, he will be the governor of Illinois, and I'll call him governor, but I will never look at him as a politician. Because I met the guy when he was not. And I saw the guy step into my world that's very uncomfortable in a season of his life when he was literally losing his wife. In a season of his life when family became more important to him than maybe ever before. In the same season as he's losing a wife, he's gaining grandchildren. And yet still he's saying, Jaco, come on, we got to fight for kids. I want you to hear, before I go on my next 25-minute spiel here, that understand, I will not stand here. Do you know I have not in 5.5 years endorsed a single political candidate? Gary's the first guy. I do not endorse political candidates. Yes, I endorse President Trump, of course, because that's the first president of the United States that stood up and said, yes, children are in fact being sex trafficked in our country. He's the first president that opened an office in the White House, and I was very honored to serve on an advisory board and a council force against sex trafficking in the White House. So let's start this thing. I want you to understand something. Matthew 18, and yes, I will quote scripture, and you should hold me accountable to the Word of God. 100%. Matthew 18 talks very clearly about what you should do to yourself if you lead a single kid astray. If you lead one child to stumble, one, you put a millstone, which is about a 50-pound center block, with a chain around your neck and go drown yourself in the ocean. That's what God, not Jaco, has to say about grown adults in a free society like this that willingly will lead kids to slaughter. You had a political candidate, and I wish to face him one-on-one, but he will run from me. You had a political candidate a couple of days ago that spoke, and I don't know that he knew what he was saying. But he was saying that if the schools want to teach comprehensive sex ed to 5-year-olds, then let them do it. Let me explain to you that he just crossed Matthew 18. A book that he says he follows, that I can't hold him accountable, and that's Bailey, 100%. Let me tell Mr. Bailey what he said that he didn't know what he was saying. Let these kids go to the wolves. And then he followed up by saying the parents should do more. No, the parents are electing you, dude, to go represent their best will and their families as a potential governor, which he will not do. He will not, because he's not surrounded by the right people. Because he's already gone on national television and told you that he will allow people to indoctrinate children. You cannot separate child sexual exploitation from sex trafficking. You cannot separate abortion from sex trafficking. You cannot separate the DEA or the drug enforcement agencies from sex trafficking. So let's wind the clock back. In 2019, prior to COVID, I wrote an op-ed for Newsweek. This is before it became popular. And I warned America that it's coming. Because I've been fighting child sex trafficking for 26 years. I was 18 when it started. Jaco, how did it start for you? My sister was trafficked in South Africa for 6 years. You learn a lot as an oldest brother with no father in the home. When you and your brother look for a sister and you have a mom that stands on Jesus and says, we will find her. Not a day in 6 years did my mom doubt, and we did find her. And we immigrated to the United States, and then I saw trafficking with my own eyes in Knoxville, Tennessee, and it hit me like a sledgehammer because this is the land of the free and the home of the brave. Surely Americans will not harm children. Surely. No way in the United States of America will they sell a child like a piece of furniture. This is 2001. I came here 3 weeks after 9/11. I came to a United States of America because of tragedy. We are a long way off from that country today. Today I want to tell you, and this may be, Daddy's talking about a moonshot, this may be a gut punch for you. Forget about thinking this is the left. We've got very, very sick people in the GOP in this country. Very sick people. We've got people in the GOP that are fully informed, and Scripture speaks clearly about this. If I, Ezekiel 33, watchman on the wall, warn you, Molly, and I say, Molly, in your child's school, they're indoctrinating children, and you, Molly, then choose to look the other way, the blood's on your hands. That's Scripture. You have politicians today in the GOP, never mind Biden and the left and Soros and the Clintons and the Obamas and the Bushes that stood by while children were being raped in this country. They know, they are fully informed. They are fully aware. Joseph Biden, as a human being, is fully aware of the amount of children that are being raped on our border tonight. He's fully aware that 60% of the children approaching our border tonight have already been sexually exploited and indoctrinated by the cartel in Mexico. He's fully aware. The reason they would not acknowledge that a single child is raped on our border is if they do, and they stand in the White House and they get whoever their press secretary is of the month, and they say, listen, children are being raped at the border, that America would immediately demand the border to be shut down. And they would rather have an open border and have children be raped and look the other way. That is a level of evil that literally comes into agreement with demonic forces. You have to understand that. This is not a president or a Governor Pritzker that is not informed. They are informed. They know. How do you know, Jaco? Well, let me give you a quick little history lesson. We're going to travel fast. In 1950, Alfred Kinsey did sexual experiments on boys 6 weeks old. The foremost scholar, Judith Reisman, on Kinsey, before she passed away last year, dedicated her whole library, her whole body of work to me. It's at Liberty University. Her children called and said, can you please give it back to the family? What I didn't tell her children is your mom didn't want to give it to you because you didn't believe her work. But yes, we'll give it back to you. It's still at Liberty University. That study showed 24-hour around-the-clock sexual experimentation on kids. It was funded by 2 U.S. presidents. Fully aware. Kinsey wrote a sexual manifesto for the world's youth. Everything we have in this country, everything you learned, if you were born after 1952, everything you learned about sex came from Kinsey's work. Every book, every curriculum, the Birds and the Bees book you read when your dad gave it to you was in fact off. It was misguided because it came from Kinsey's work. Well, in 2019, when everybody is talking about late 19 COVID in China, I warned of something else. I said, well, wait a minute. The WHO, yes, the World Health Organization, and their president in 2019 rewrote the sexual manifesto that Kinsey wrote. That became the sexual revolution in the 1960s, the Love is Love movement, the Man-Blah organization, Man-Boy Love organization, that we so openly embraced, that became the AIDS epidemic, that became the AZT disaster in Africa led by an Anthony Fauci. Back then, you go ask Africans about Anthony Fauci. They'll tell you he killed their ancestors with a drug called AZT because they promoted promiscuity. They promoted same-sex relations. Well, in 2019, the World Health Organization rewrote Kinsey's work. They wrote a new sexual manifesto for the world's children. I tracked it because we do global analysis, gap analysis. I've fought this in 53 countries. I've lived on 3 continents. I've traveled the world. I've literally worked in 48 of the 50 states in the United States. This is what we do, sun up to sundown. But see, here's what happened by the WHO in 2019. They invited some friends to write this new manifesto with them. They invited Planned Parenthood, International Planned Parenthood Federation. They invited SICUS, which is the governing body of all U.S. school curriculum. They invited UNESCO, which is the United Nations arm of youth. So those friends came together in Europe and they wrote a new sexual manifesto for the world's youth. They took that manifesto into Scotland. We tracked it into Scotland. They made it law in Scotland. They started teaching 10-year-old boys about anal sex. They started teaching 10-year-old boys how to implement and put in an anal condom. They started teaching 5-year-olds about masturbation. They perfected it. They made it law in Scotland. And then they took it to Kenya, Africa. And I got calls from Africa. Jaco, our kids, there's no mothers fighting for those children. And then I got a notice, it's coming to America. And I warned America, you can go research it in Newsweek. And people laughed at me. Jaco, that will never happen. We're never going to teach 10-year-olds about sex in this country. And I said, they're looking for one suitor. And the second that suitor signs a bill, it's going to spread like wildfire through this country. March 19th, 2020, in the middle of COVID, about a week after California lockdown, Gavin Newsom signed an executive order that every single public school kid will be taught comprehensive sex ed that was drafted by the World Health Organization, SICUS, Planned Parenthood, and UNESCO. He snuck it in. It passed in 45 seconds in their house, and it passed under a transgender equity fund for healthcare. A week after he signed it, Governor Inslee signed it in Washington State. And then it ran through this country. Texans said, Jaco, it won't come. It hit Austin. We had to fight like heck to get it voted out. But then we learned that the George Soroses of the world control local government. They control superintendents. And then we learned through COVID that the superintendent actually controls your child, not the governor of the state, not the school board of the state, not the school board of the school. This is how we could vote it down in Texas, but Austin, Texas is teaching comprehensive sex ed because their superintendent voted it in. And little by little, they gobble up the superintendents. And it's in this room. It's in your kid's school. It's in your kid's school. So we started with a book called It's Perfectly Normal. Doesn't that sound good? But let me explain to you how UNESCO works. The 1970 obscenity exemption statute that was written for law enforcement to be able to look at obscene material of children at a crime scene because it was illegal, and healthcare, and then they threw in education and libraries. That's why you can look at a fully nude photograph of a woman in a library and it's art. You take that photograph off the wall today and you walk into the street and you show it to a child and it's a felony. But in the school, it's art. Here's how it works. If you and I write a book and we get it certified as a curriculum, Volume 2 does not go through the next stringent process. So once you get a book into a school curriculum through SICUS, Volume 2, you can move it. Volume 3, you move it. It does not get tested again. So the books that's in your children's classroom today did not just show up today. They started in 1960. You read them. Your parents gave them to you. They just kept moving the needle, moving the needle, moving the needle. And when COVID came, they said, now let's go for the full Monty. Now let's do in the United States what we did in Canada and in Kenya, because the parents are not awake, not woke, but not awake. Because over time, it's not been general practice for the conservatives in this country to go through every curriculum that your child is learning. And they knew that. How do you think we have 83,000 lawsuits against the Boy Scouts of America? I want you to hear what I'm saying. 83,000 lawsuits. And in general, sexual exploitation is reported 1% of the crime. So it's not 83,000. It should be 8.3 million. If it can take a woman 32 years to speak of a single rape that is gruesome and horrific, and unfortunately there is rape in the room, there's sexual abuse in the room. There's a woman in this room that's been trafficked. That's the reality. This is an America that has allowed this evil to blow into our communities like a mist on our watch. This is an America that, in fact, did not stand on the wall like Ezekiel 33 says. This is an America that focused on small business, as we should, that focused on building a country, as we should, that focused on paying our taxes, as we should. But we, in fact, trusted the government with our children. You are faced with a dire situation. You cannot trust the government with your children. You cannot. I understand that it's going to put a tremendous pressure on you. I understand through COVID you had to learn how to homeschool. You had to learn how to tolerate your husband for 8 hours a day because he was home. But I'm going to talk real. We have no children in the room, so I'm going to talk real with you. I'm going to explain to you what it is and what it is not. Sex trafficking is different from child sexual exploitation. There's 25 forms of sex trafficking. There's labor trafficking, there's sexual exploitation, and there's prostitution, which your state, by the way, under Pritzker and under Bailey, are looking at decriminalizing prostitution unilaterally. And if you think that's a good idea, let me quickly debunk that for you. Holland, the Netherlands, decriminalized prostitution. Sex trafficking of minors went through the roof. Las Vegas, Nevada, have 5 legal brothels. Only 5, by the way, men. Yeah, I know you think on the Vegas Strip prostitution is legal. It's in fact not legal on the Vegas Strip. The 5 brothels in the state of Nevada, none of them are on the Vegas Strip. They're all in the hills, but there's sex trafficking and prostitution because when you legalize a crime, the illegal activity goes through the roof. Ask law enforcement. Go to Boulder, Colorado and step over the heroin needles in a state that just legalized THC cannabis to whatever level. You cannot legalize a crime and think that you're going to curb a crime. You cannot decriminalize the sale of human beings. It's impossible. So for an adult, you have to prove force, fraud, coercion. Okay, but here you got a dilemma. We have statutory rape. That's 17 and under. That's federal. Now you got states that are lowering their age of consent to 14, 15, 16. So bye-bye statutory rape. Your state is one of them that's campaigning right now on the left to lower your age of consent because that's a way around statutory rape. Understand that they're attacking the kindergarten kid because they really want your 12-year-old. They will fatigue the parents in this room. They will come for your 5-year-old so that you concede the 14-year-old. I had these conversations with conservative moms today that said, you know what? Let's just take our 9-year-old daughter and just tell her everything about sex and I'm saying, absolutely not. You have to understand that a child's brain develops in a certain pattern. Yes, we have outliers. Yes, we have some 9-year-old girls that can fall pregnant, but in general, it's 12 through 15. Think about when you went through puberty. Women in the room. I'm going to be real with you. Think about your first menstrual cycle. Okay? 12, 13. Did your father sit you down and explain to you what happened? If you're a woman in the room and your father sat you down, not your mom, your father, raise your hand. 2. Do you know that the predator knows that? Do you know the gap that creates in a woman's life when her father, and dads, if you haven't done it, I'm not judging you, I'm just letting you know how the brain is activated sexually. If a father has a conversation, a healthy conversation with a mother, with a daughter, when she's going through her most confused time of her life, when she doesn't know her body, She feels lost. She doesn't understand. If a father has a healthy, age-appropriate conversation with his daughter in that time, he will earn her heart forever. If a father does not, a predator can spot it. Because if she isolates but just a bit, or if she's raised without a father like my sister was, and there's not a defender on the wall, there's not a warrior on the wall, there's not someone looking over her shoulder, there's not someone asking her, who are your friends on social media? Who do you talk to? Well, Jaco, we can't intrude. Our kids have privacy. You're their parent, not their friend. Do you understand that when you're a parent, when your child is born, you're first their protector. You're the protector until about age 7, 8. That's your sole job. That is your sole job. Protect. Don't run across the street. Look left, right. Don't jump in the pool without your floaty. Don't. You're a protector. Then you graduate to cop. Then you become the cop. Now you police everything. I can't. My kid needs privacy. No, they don't. They do not need privacy. That's what the school teachers is telling him. Hey, you've got privacy. We're going to vaccinate you. Don't tell your mom. Hey, I'm going to show you a boy's penis when you're 10, but don't tell your mom. No, they do not have sexual autonomy. You become the cop. And then at about 15, you become the coach. Now you're coaching. And then at 18, 19, if you did your job, you become the counselor. But see, we've got parents that are counseling and negotiating with 7-year-olds. We've got dads that are not policing their kids. So the predator sees that. It's in your child's demeanor. It's in their language. It's how they pose. I can look at a picture of a child and I can tell you almost to a point. You'll think I'm reading your tea leaves. I can tell you what's going on in your child's life by looking at a photograph, by looking at their post. They are vomiting their life story online. A predator and a pedophile builds a dossier on your child. They do not go after a child that has high risk. They go after the vulnerable. So here's a myth. Well, it's kidnappings. No, 1% of child sexual exploitation, 1% are kidnappings. The movie Taken is in fact a lie. And by the way, he's just an actor, because the same guy that played the badass dude in Taken that rescued his daughter is also the guy 5 years before that played Alfred Kinsley in the movie. So Liam Neeson glorified the guy that abused children, and then he plays the guy that rescues children. He's just an actor. That is not sex trafficking. Forget about Cambodia, the Philippines, Manila, Russia, Poland, the Ukraine. Yes, women are being exploited. The Middle East, Saudi. I'm talking about American-born children. Do you know that in 2021, our study showed the following? The fastest growing form of trafficking rising in our country is what's called familial trafficking, which means it's a parent, it's a coach, it's a teacher, it's a Boy Scout leader. Now your child this should send shivers down your spine. If you don't go have real conversations with your kids tonight, I will in fact say you don't love them. Because Scripture says you discipline who you love. Love is not a feeling. This country, I'm disgusted with the movement in the United States where love has become a feeling. If Gary upsets me, it must mean he doesn't love me. But maybe he just gave me advice to save my life. And he actually loves me enough not to let me fall off a cliff. That's in fact mentorship. So if you love your child, you're going to get tough. They will not like it. I don't care. You're not in counselor mode right now. You're in cop mode or protector mode. You can tell them why you're doing what you're doing. to the fastest form of trafficking rising is familial. What does that look like? It looks like American children are being sold for sex while living at home. In your city, in your school district, and yes, in your church. Gary spoke about Turning Point USA. He doesn't get credit for this. Gary literally helped Turning Point. First money into Charlie, okay? Let me tell you something about Turning Point. In 2019, I spoke at 35 U.S. college campuses for Turning Point. There's 52 weeks in a year, so you figure out the travel schedule. I flew 1.6 million miles that year. My own study told me that 60% of your daughters that are at college right now have shared nude pictures of themselves online.
That is true.
60%. Our girls, our women have bought into the sexualization of women. Men don't have to sexualize women anymore. They self-sexualize. We have so degraded men, we have so neutered men, we have so bastardized men, strong, masculine, independent men of God, that they've now completely departed from honoring women. Women don't honor their own bodies. They now sell themselves. So now the child is selling herself at the dinner table, on Fans Only, on Instagram, selling herself in her room. You have no idea. And she comes down in her sweatsuit, and you think my girl is an angel, but I don't know who she's talking to. Meanwhile, she's being coerced, she's being defrauded, she's being bribed online by somebody who saw something in her where she had a need. There's not a person in this room that does not have a sign on their forehead, not one, including Gary and me, that says, make me feel important, all of us. The job of a predator is figuring out what it is. So this is not just parents not being present. This is literally a predator looking at your child, identifying your child as a soft target. So our job is to raise the risk profile of the child, so that when a predator looks at your child, the predator sees trouble. This is going to be difficult. My cover will be blown. If I ask this girl for a picture of herself, she's going to call her father. He's going to step in, and the next person I talk to is a guy who's saying, I'm reporting you to the FBI. Well, how would that happen? If you as a parent go home tonight, you go to our website and you educate yourself on how predators profile. We've done all the work for you. You can literally go to your school board tomorrow, completely informed, with notes, and just pepper them with facts. If you go to our website and just do a little bit of work and go download it. We're in the process of writing letters for you to your school principals that you can download and just print. I'm trying to make it so easy for you. Just step into the fight and say, I'll fight. 95% of the victims are women, are girls. There's not a single, not one feminist organization in the United States that fights child sex trafficking. But 95% of the victims are women. Go figure. They're lying to you. They don't care about women. Why is the fight in the womb so severe? Because if you don't have to defend a child in the womb, then you don't have to defend the 12-year-old that's being raped 5 to 15 times per day. That's the average. The average age of sex trafficking in our country is 12. The average age of porn entry in our country, starting to watch porn, is boys age 8. I got a backdoor into Pornhub. I've got a memo that was shared to me by one of their former investors. And I'll show you statistics. And it's on my social media profiles where I do series of shows on this. How Pornhub targets the church. How they have actual data on men watching porn while sitting in church. How they show that in the hours of from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. on a Sunday, what happens to porn. How that I can tell you today that Gen Z, which is 18 through 25, is the highest porn watching community on planet Earth. Not the baby boomers. No, they had to work. They were busy. Gen Z. your children, your high schoolers are number one demographic. On average, the American high schooler watches 10 and a half minutes of porn per session, 2 sessions per day. That's on average. Here's what happens to a child when you introduce sex as a topic, just the topic. Not even anal sex, not even something gruesome. Sex as a topic. If you go to a 5-year-old and you talk sex, particularly as they like to do anal sex, why? Because it is an absolute abomination according to the Word of God. Sexual immorality, same sex is an abomination. If you don't like it, take it up with God when you see Him. There's not a single civilization in the history of the world that survived sexual immorality. Do you know that? Do you know that the Romans, even Esther, Queen Esther, famous story, Esther is going to go to her husband, the king. And we say, if I die, I die. Well, why? Because Esther didn't sleep in the same bed as her husband. She didn't sleep in the same room as her husband. He had multiple wives. She had to get permission to just approach her husband. Why? Because the men of the time, all the Roman Caesars, all the Greek empires slept with boys. They only slept with women when they wanted to procreate. That is a fact. So the Roman Empire fell because of anal sex. The Greek Empire fell because of anal sex. The Persians fell because of anal sex. The Chinese fell because of anal sex, and that's when they outlawed pornography. So let a communist country teach us something about morality. Because the free people clearly do not value it. You cannot embrace sexual immorality. 3 generations and you're done. This is generation 3. We embraced it in 1960s. Our nation is falling apart at the seams because we've become an immoral culture. Forget about asking this man to honor a business deal when he's sexually immoral, which he's not, but any man. Does that make sense? I will not be an honorable business partner if I'm sexually immoral. I will not be a good father if I'm sexually immoral. Because the second I'm sexually immoral, my satisfaction, my stimulation is priority number 1. I get flaps on my eyes like a racehorse. My brain gets calcified. It's the only drug, pornography, that literally changes the neural pathway of the brain. So when you go to a 5-year-old and you introduce sex, you're activating hormones and neurons that start firing that were supposed to, by God's design, lay dormant until they were 12. So now you are rapidly advancing the growth cycle of that child at a chemical and a physiological level. You cannot tell Johnny when he's 5 about anal sex and Johnny not go research it. That's not how kids work. Have you had a 5-year-old? Hey, don't climb on the refrigerator. What's he going to do? Climb on the freaking refrigerator. Every day I tell my son, don't do it. He's going to go do it. Because he's going to test. We have a case right now of a 12-year-old boy addicted to porn 2 hours a week, completely fried. Should play in the Major League Baseball, will never. Is losing his life. His brain is fried. He's completely addicted to porn only because he was asked a single question in the classroom. He was 10 years old. He was asked, hey, are you a boy? Are you a girl? Do you know about anal sex? He went home, he took YouTube, he typed in anal sex. You're welcome to do the same, and you're going to get free gang rape. Try me. Go see. Yes, porn is free. Pornhub understands. They will give you so much free because they will hook you and it stays forever. The trauma that a child endures by just viewing this material is epic. Can you imagine, like my sister, a child that is sexually exploited for 6 years? Recently, we did some interviews, and we helped rescue a woman who was 52 years old. She was trafficked for 14 years by her husband. She was a member of the Dallas Country Club, which has about a 40-year waiting list. It's ultra elite. She lived two blocks from a president of the United States. Her husband sold her. We rescued her maybe 7 months ago, and we started counting how many men had abused her. And we just averaged it at 10 a day for 14 years. That's the world I live in every single day. And now take that number and put it down at a 16-year-old. I told you earlier they want to decriminalize prostitution in your state. Well, what about the child that was trafficked at 16 and she was under the law, where we didn't have to prove fraud or coercion? She's a victim, and now she graduated out of the law. What about that? That's something I want to tackle with Gary Rabine in this state, where law enforcement would look at that child and go, when were you first exploited? At 14. You're in fact not a prostitute, you're a victim. Now, but I'm 26, it doesn't matter. You were sexually indoctrinated at 16, you're a victim. Your father came into your room at 9, you're a victim. Your uncle trafficked you. Your U.S. Olympic coach, Simone Biles, trafficked you. You're a victim. You cannot look the other way. You cannot one day stand in front of God and Him saying some crazy South African come and stood in front of you and told you this was happening and you looked the other way. That's going to be on you. That's the danger of coming to one of my speeches. You now no longer can be an ostrich with your head in the sand. Now, tomorrow, you're going to have to call your daughters. I don't care if your daughter is 36 years old. I'm asking you to call her and say, baby, whatever you call her, was there ever a time in your life when somebody sexually violated you and you never talked about it? And do not be shocked if your daughters say, yes, Dad. And you've got pieces to pick up. Decades go into restoring lives when they are sexually decimated. And it's happening on our watch. And no, these are not small cases. You want numbers? I'll give you numbers. There's currently today, and this is Ken Paxton, the Attorney General of Texas's number. My number's higher. There's 79,000 children in sex trafficking in Texas alone today. 79,000. And I haven't even started on the border tonight. That's just American children. There's 500,000 in America. The God I serve said, I will leave 99 for one. One. 500,000? I told you Biden knows what's happening on the border. They all do. Have you heard of the rape trees? Let me tell you quickly how this works. We're in a watermelon farm. There's 300 little footprints smaller than my hand. The cartel is trafficking them through. We find 5 girls on a farm. They're all 5 naked. They were discarded by the cartel because they were used up. One of the little 3-year-old girls was literally being eaten by a coyote, by an animal. The White House knows about this case, yet does nothing. The stuff we see will make you vomit. CBP cannot send people back. I'm standing on the border and I'm saying, guys, can you interrogate this child? We're not allowed to. What are you doing? We're supposed to help the refugees. They're not refugees. Tell the cartel to stop bringing kids across. We cannot do it. I spoke at the Attorney General Summit, the bicentennial Mexico-U.S. Attorney General Summit, 20 U.S. Attorney Generals, 14 Mexican Attorney Generals, and they won't touch this subject because they know. The President of Mexico knows very well that children are being raped in his country on their track towards the United States. And when they get into the United States, it's a $15,000 ticket that child has to pay back for rite of passage. Either the mother or the child will pay it back by sex. And do you know what they do to the mother when they get on the other side? They rape the mother at a rape tree in front of her daughter in the United States, with Border Patrol knowing this very well. They take her underwear, they hang it in a tree. There are hundreds of these trees on the Texas border. Where's Fox News now? Where's Tucker now? Where's Sean now? I don't care about any of these people until you step up when you know an evil like that exists and you actually take your platform and you put some political capital at risk like this guy is doing. Then I will respect you. I don't respect any of them because they know, yet they don't talk about it. Oh, they'll talk sex trafficking. No, let's talk child rape. Let's talk details. Let's talk about American fathers selling their own children, American mothers. Let's talk about the number one form of bringing fentanyl into our country is in the backpack of children. A drug, by the way, when you touch it, you die. No, nobody's talking about that. Do you know that on the 14th of June, just last week, the president of Mexico went to see Joe Biden to talk about the American superstate to remove the border permanently? Do you know about that? That's a fact. That's being discussed. They're talking about the European Union, the American Union. Hear me today. I believe you're going to have a champion. By God's grace, please, Lord, may Gary Rabine be voted in as the governor of this state. Because I will tell you this, in closing, I will tell you this. I've looked in the eyes of the other men, they will not fight for your children. You have a guy who literally on Newsmax said, let them teach the kids sexual exploitation. Let them do it. I can tell you that that individual is going to have blood on his hands. This is not a game. Yes, there's 8 days left before the election. Don't let us do sales 101. If every one of you just called 10 people, you covered the state in 4 days. 8 days is a long time. It's a long time. This is of dire essence. This is absolutely dire. Because here is what I'm finding on the border. When you line the children up on the border, and I'm talking about we lining them up, and Border Patrol calls a white bus, the white bus shows up, the white bus takes them to a processing center, they get a shower at a processing center, they tell the white bus where they need to go, they get a plane ticket to an American city or a bus ticket. It used to be Texas only, then it became DeSantis in Florida. DeSantis kicked up a ruckus and said, we can't handle any more migrant children. Now what we're hearing on the border is two things. We hear Chicago and we hear Indiana. Chicago because it's a sanctuary state and the predators and the traffickers know it. And they know you have no human trafficking task force, not one. ICE cannot talk to anybody. You don't have an ICAC team anymore. You have nothing. This is a free-reign playground, like taking candy from a kid in this state. Indiana, why? Because they have the weakest human trafficking laws. Their governor and their attorney general asked me last week, come help, because something is happening. People are flooding in here. Soon, the teachers in the room, if you're a teacher, mark my words, the following will happen in your school unless this tide is being stemmed by policy. Policy. We need policy. People tell me, Jaco, the Trump wall. I don't know if you've been there. That's a beautiful wall. He's right. It's a beautiful wall. It is. 15 feet underground, cemented in concrete, rebar, almost 30 feet tall. It is a wall. Let me tell you something. If there's not a policy that says you cannot come illegally, they'll climb a 100-foot wall. If you do not have policymakers in the state of Illinois, your children are going to pay the price. That is a fact. So you have a window here. A predator will chat your child up. He'll say things like, I'll give you an example. Let me not do Molly. Where's a married couple? Is there a married couple? That couple. Are you married? No? Where's a married couple? Okay. Sir, do you remember your first date? Yeah. Okay, ma'am, I'm going to ask you, what's your name? Catherine. Sorry? Catherine. Catherine. Okay, first date. The guy tried to hold your hand. You know what he was doing? He was testing you. He reached out with his hand and he touched your hand. And he was measuring one thing. Does she leave her hand there or does she take it away? That is exactly what a predator does with your child. He reaches out softly and he does a small little touch online. Oh, you have beautiful eyes. Has anybody told you? And the way your child responds tells the predator whether she's ready for second base or not. That is how simple it is. This is not a white van pulling up, snatching your kid from the playground. All of a sudden, your kid's gone. If she pulled her hand away, you probably took another month before you tried that again. If she kept her hand, you held it and you went, yes. And you started planning your next move. It's dating 101. That is how a predator works online. He will court your child for months. He will earn her heart. This is why battered women will stand on the witness stand and defend the guy that just bounced her head off the wall. They're trained that it's love. I've never met a child in my life in 26 years that self-identified as a victim. After rescue, you tell them that they're victims. And do you know what happens then? They die. 90% of child sex trafficking victims die after they're rescued. Because their world falls apart. They come to grips with pain. They go from fight and flight and just survival mode into dealing with it. And they commit suicide. This is a horrific crime. You have one proper safe house in your state. Refuge for Women, Cat Frank, one. You have no beds if we rescue a child tonight. Not a single bed in this state. At a licensed, trauma-informed sex trafficking safe house, you have no place. If we rescue 10 girls tonight, they will not stay in the state of Illinois. We have nowhere to take them. Because your governor and your lawmakers in the state made it merely impossible to house those kinds of victims in your state. This guy can change that. This guy can actually have law enforcement enforce the law. Can actually have a pedophile registered as a sex offender. Can actually have a pedophile go through due process, go through the DA, go in a court of law, stand before a jury of peers and get prosecuted and get the 30 years that he's supposed to get. Not a misdemeanor, slap on the wrist, 1,000 hours of community service for raping children. That's what's happening in your state. You've got George Soros bought off district attorneys in this state that only a governor can go uproot and clean up. I promise you, Bailey is not that guy. He's weak. He had one opportunity on Newsmax. And he said, let them teach the children comprehensive sex ed. That is a cop-out. Please introduce me to him. I will say it to his face. I will debate him until the cows come home. So I don't know what Illinois is going to do. I'm going to close with this. I don't know what Illinois is going to do. What you should do is think very clearly what it means. Where's Jordan? I don't even know where she's at. What it means when a man has children that work with him, that runs these businesses. The fastest growing business he was talking about, he's not even running it. His son Austin is the brainchild behind that thing. His son's running it. His daughter's still close to him. It's a family. I say this, you want to meet the parent, just meet the children. There's Jordan. Jordan, thank you. No, Gary Rabine's not perfect, nor am I. I'm a sinner that's being transformed and reformed into the image of Jesus, praise God. But I will tell you, I will fight for your child when you won't.
Thank you.
I will say this, I wouldn't have to, but I will hold Gary accountable. I will. Illinois will become a second home. We will fight for your children. We will redraft policy. We just drafted a legislation in Oklahoma called Assembly Bill 3702. You can look it up. Everybody went crazy about DeSantis' bill for 3 to 8-year-olds. We drafted a bill pre-K to 12th grade. Okay? And that bill, signed by Governor Stitt, because it's a governor that will fight for children, endorsed by Representative Russ and Senator Weaver, that bill bans sexual exploitation and pornographic material in the classroom, K through 12. I tell you that because it's possible. We say this in a film we produce, which you should watch, a film called 8 Days. The only thing necessary for evil to exist is for good men to do nothing. Do you know that over 90% of the people who fight sex trafficking are women? Where are the men? Well, we're building business, Jaco. Build business and fight for your child. Build business and run for school board. Build business and storm the gates of hell. Build business and hold your principal accountable. Build business and stand with the right guy for governor. Build business and call out the corrupt politicians. You can't just build business anymore. We cannot abdicate and just let the moms raise the kids anymore. It's time for dads to, number one, you personally and me and Gary, walk away from sexual immorality yourself. Depart from pornography. If you need help, do it tonight. I will help you. We've got every resource you need. You cannot. I will haunt you in your sleep. You will not sleep. I will pray that God makes your sleep miserable. You cannot be the guy that creates demand for sexual content, the very thing that traps young girls. You cannot be that guy. You must be the guy that says, I need help, I'm going to clean up my act, and I'm going to become a freaking soldier, and I'm going to war for America's children. I'm going to war for Illinois' children. You cannot be part of the problem. Women, if you're in porn, get help. We have it for you. I want you to go to our website, jacobooyens.com. Everything is there. You go on the pages, we've got everything there for you on comprehensive sex ed, all the curriculums, the books. You can go look at pictures that we didn't want to show tonight because it's absolutely vile. And just so you understand, yes, we're talking about pictures of a boy performing oral sex on another boy in your kid's curriculum, by the way. Yes, we're talking about lawn boy. Hey, let's start a business together. Let's go back in the shed and I'll teach you how to have oral sex. Yes, we're talking about kindergarten. Hey, we need you to experiment with masturbation and experiment on one another. That's encouraged in the classroom. Yes, we're talking about in your state, in the beginning of summer, a sex ed camp where the parents are paying $100 to take kids and drop their own kids off to a sex ed camp. Yes, we're talking about 2 weeks ago, parents dropping their kids off at a drag strip show in Dallas, Texas. This is in fact Sodom and Gomorrah. It is only by God's grace that this country has not been destroyed. I will say this to you. People ask me, why did Trump lose? Yeah, we can talk election fraud, anything you want. I'll say this to you. God will not be mocked. This nation has departed from God. It has departed from living a moral lifestyle and a moral culture. And Scripture tells you a people has the leadership they deserve. Swallow that. May you elect leadership that you deserve this time. A leadership that will stand for your child, even when you don't. I'm asking the men, I will help you. I will walk with you. We'll get you out of your vices. We will absolutely help you. You'll get your family back. Do you know that the children today spend 126 hours as a 10-year-old, on average 126 hours a year watching porn? That's 126 hours of your child's life they will never get back. Unless you fight for them, because they don't know how. Our website will arm you. It will equip you. I'll give you what you need. I'll work with Molly. I'll work with the Moms for America. We will fight. Hey, I've done it for 26 years. We're going to do it until we fix this thing. But we need you to take your community back. And by the grace of God, please take your whole phone book, exhaust yourself for the next 8 days. Do not stop talking, even if it's one topic. There's only one guy that's going to protect your children, and I'll say it from the rooftops. I ask you, I beg you, for the sake of your children, put a leader in your governor's position that will actually go to war against traffickers. It's Gary Rabine. Thank you.